Today, you're going to see two videos. This one, hopefully you're watching now, and the one that follows about Sacagawea's early life. The video is for you guys, but I'm also just making it available in case there are students somewhere else in the country that maybe is at home like you, which is probably most of them, and want to learn a little bit more about Sacagawea. So in the video you watch, hopefully, after this one, you'll see where I talk about Sacagawea's early life, and then we get into just about where she leaves for the expedition. And I also talk about a couple major events leading up to the expedition, like the American Revolution. Very quickly, this video is not about the American Revolution, it's about Sacagawea, but it's hard to talk about her without talking about the American Revolution or the French Revolution and Napoleon and Thomas Jefferson. So I hope you all are doing well, and I will see you guys later. Hello, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'd like to talk about Sacagawea. But before we get to her, we need to back up about 20 years before she comes into the picture. And we need to talk about the American Revolution. And the American Revolution is when there were 13 colonies in North America who were ruled by England across the Atlantic Ocean. And to make a long story short, basically the colonists overthrew the King of England. Now, England and France didn't get along very well. So when France heard about the colonies trying to overthrow the king, they were like, yeah, let's help. So that's what they did. They came over and helped. They saw an opportunity to hurt an enemy, and so they helped the colonists. And now we're talking about like the 1780s. About 10 years later, the French citizens get the idea that they would like to overthrow their king. And so they have essentially a 10-year bloody war to get rid of the king. And I promise, we're getting to Sacagawea, but we got to talk about the American Revolution, which leads to the French Revolution, which leads to France having trouble with money. Now they have a large block of land in North America, and they feel Napoleon, maybe you've heard of this guy, he was the leader of France at the time, and he thought that he could make some money by selling major part of North America to the United States, a very young country. We're talking 1803. The United States has only been a country for about 15 years. So they're still struggling as well. But Napoleon wants to get money from the United States, and the president at the time is a guy named Thomas Jefferson. You may have heard of him, third president, may have seen him. He's on the $2 bill. His big thing is that he doesn't want a strong federal government. He wants the states to mostly be in power. Wants a small army, wants a small navy, let the states do their thing. But he sees this opportunity to expand the United States. And you'll see on the map, the United States started on the East Coast and basically, with a few exceptions, expand west. Like California is an earlier state than Oklahoma, but for the most part, the United States expands west. So Jefferson sees the opportunity to increase the United States land, so he buys it. Sacagawea. I know this video is about Sacagawea. We're getting to her. Like really quickly. So Thomas Jefferson asks a couple people, but we're going to talk about these two guys named Lewis and Clark. And the history books will call this the Lewis and Clark expedition. Expedition. If you see that word, it has ped in it. And if you remember, ped means foot. So Lewis and Clark are literally going to start walking across this vast amount of land, and the goal is to find the Pacific Ocean. So think back to 1803. We don't have satellite photography. It's just very unknown exactly how much land the U.S. has acquired. So they need people to go out and survey the land, check it out, see what is there, make it ready to move colonists, or by now they're citizens of the United States, out there, most likely pushing away whoever is out there, Native Americans, unfortunately. So I think we're getting there. Sacagawea. Lewis and Clark are going to hire this guy, his name's Carbonneau, or Carbonneau in French, and his wife is a Shoshone Indian. And she is going to be extremely valuable for that expedition. See, I told you, we would eventually get to Sacagawea. We just had to talk about a few key events that led up to her becoming a very famous and very important American. So I am going to read from an article that can be found on Newsela. The link is in the description, but you can also just follow along because I'll put the article on the screen as I read it. But this article starts off with a synopsis. A synopsis. If you're unfamiliar with that word, a synopsis means a quick picture of what the article is going to be about. Really briefly. That doesn't mean you don't have to read the whole article. It's just previewing some of the important material in the synopsis. So I'll begin with that. So the title of this article is Cultural Pioneers, Sacagawea. Synopsis. Sacagawea, the daughter of a Shoshone chief, was born around 1788 in Lemhi County, Idaho. At around age 12, she was captured by an enemy tribe and sold to a French-Canadian trapper who made her his wife. And if you're wondering what trapper is, it's a profession that was popular back then. People would trap animals and then, a little gross, but skin them and then sell the fur for warm coats and boots and those type of things. In November 1804, she was invited to join the Lewis and Clark expedition as a Shoshone interpreter. And if you're not familiar with what interpreter is, it's a person that goes from language to language. So she knew English, but she also knew the language of the Shoshone, which might be helpful when white men are moving into territory that is not owned by white men. So she might be a nice way to show that these guys come in peace. And if there ever is a disagreement, she might be able to make the disagreement go away. After leaving the expedition, she died at Fort Manuel in what is now Kennel, South Dakota, around 1812. So of course, we get an idea of the article, but we still need to read it because all of those details weren't there. It was just a brief synopsis about what we are going to read. So now I want to get into her early life. The daughter of a Shoshone chief, Sacagawea was a Shoshone interpreter, best known for serving as a member of the Lewis and Clark expedition into the American West. She is also famous for being the only woman on the journey. Much of Sacagawea's life is a mystery. She was born around 1788, although some sources say 1786 or 1787 in Lemhi County, Idaho. And the reason not a lot is known about her early life is because when she was born as a baby, nobody knew that she would be this famous pioneer of the American West. So that's why the dates of her birth are a little unclear. Around the age of 12, Sacagawea was captured by the Hidatse Indians, an enemy of the Shoshones. The Hidatses then sold her to a French-Canadian trapper named Toussaint Charbonneau, who made her one of his wives. Did you notice that last part? Made her one of his wives, meaning he possibly had more than one. So we know she was captured at age 12. We just don't know the amount of time that has gone by till she was made this guy's wife. But some sources say potentially as young as 16 or 15. Sacagawea and her husband lived among the Hidatse and Mandan Indians in the upper Missouri River area, which is now North Dakota. In November 1804, an expedition led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark entered the area. Often called the Corps, yes, I know that's not how it looks, but I promise that P is silent. Often called the Corps of Discovery, the group wanted to explore the western lands of the United States to find a route to the Pacific Ocean. The group built Fort Mandan and decided to stay there for the winter. Lewis and Clark met Charbonneau and quickly hired him to serve as interpreter on their expedition. Although she was pregnant with her first child, they asked Sacagawea to accompany them on their mission. Lewis and Clark believed that her knowledge of the Shoshone language would help them later in the journey. All right, so that's about as far as I want to go today. We did a brief introduction of the history that led up to Sacagawea eventually becoming famous, talked a little bit about her early life and how she got into the expedition itself. Tomorrow, I'd like to talk about the expedition and then the legacy she left on the United States. Remember, don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell, leave a comment if anything was unclear, and I will get right back to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.